Hi, Ati. I think right now you can just hear Coco and Teddy munching, like it's background ASMR. In hopes of keeping them quiet. It's like at the beginning of a party when there's just like 2 guests and you don't yet know whether to start. Hi. Wave. Hi, Tokyo. Not even addressing parents now. Just going for the puppies. Okay. If I look to the right or there, that's because I'm looking at my dogs. If I'm looking like slightly off screen, I'm looking at my notes with my very basic setup. Hi. Hi. I'm gonna wave at people. That's a cool function. Actually, please know I'm waving at your dogs, not you. Okay. Shall we just get started? I'm trying to keep it short this time. Like, short in terms of like, I'm trying not to like skip everything at the end because I'm like blabbing along all the time. So, I think I'll just start now. Like, I'm kind of nervous. Ugh. This is kind of a controversial topic for a change. Usually I only do stuff that everybody agrees on. So now for once I'm doing something controversial. All right, okay. So I'm just gonna start with my stuff. I hope you can hear me. I'm just, gonna start like now. Okay. All right, guys. So today we'll be talking about something that kind of seems like a routine and that I think probably, that probably many of us don't even think so much about. Thank you very much for confirming that you hear me. So anyway, like deworming, anti-tick, any anti-parasite stuff is probably something that we wouldn't think too much about because it's just so common. Like, it's one of these things that you just do and you don't think like, is it necessary or why am I doing it? You just do it because you're a good parent and you care for your pet and you want to make them safe. So I would like to talk about like, what are deworming treatments? What are anti-tick treatments? Why do we do them? How do they work? And what natural remedies would be there, but also at the same time, what can we do if we do feed those dewormers or any kind of anti-parasite treatments? What can we do to support the body of our pets to not be harmed too much by them? So again, as always, the disclaimer, I'm not a vet. I did not go to veterinary school or to any other medical school. I'm a lawyer. Like, I have learned how to research stuff, but I have not been to veterinary school. I think veterinarians are clearly amazing and they are necessary and they are lifesavers. So please do not think that I am against vets or that I would advise you not to consult a vet. That is not the case. I think all of us care about animals and we want them to be healthy. That includes veterinarians, parents, and myself and everybody else, I hope. So I'm just here to try to show you different ways and approaches, and I'm here to try to explain to you how the connections go and what you could possibly try before you go to the vet, and hopefully try to help you to have to go to the vet less often. But again, veterinarians are important and life-saving professionals that we need. So I've been attacked a little bit today by like some person about doing this real talk. So I'm doing these real talks, and I'm investing a lot of time in the research. As I said, I went to school to be a lawyer and a journalist. So what I learned to do in many years of my education is how to research stuff, how to see different perspectives. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm just here to tell you this is what I found out. This is what might possibly be happening with your pet, and this is possibly something that could help you. But I'm not making decisions for you. You're all grown and smart and caring pet parents. You make your own decisions. I'm not trying to be against anybody. I'm not trying to tell you to drop all medications tomorrow and vets are evil. That is not the case. So just as a disclaimer, please be aware that I'm doing this because I love animals, and this is not a selling show for Canine India. Like, if I want to sell stuff, I can ask a marketing agency to make ads for me or something. But this is because I actually really care, and I think it's intensely interesting to understand the connections, and that's what I do when I consult. I will not push Canine India stuff on you. You're all smart people. If you want to buy stuff from Canine India, I'm happy. If you don't, fine. As long as your pets are healthy, I'm okay. Like, seriously, please don't attack me for trying to educate, like, with whatever resources I have. So let's get into it, and let's stop talking about me and my feelings. Let's talk about parasites. Let's get into it right away. The screen always goes dark, so I'll have to tap it. Yeah, so I just see one message I want to address real quick. Of course, like, researching stuff, it's really hard to find information, and it's really hard to tell you, like, there's one page that you can go to and they have all the answers. Like, what I try to do, maybe this is interesting. When I try to research, what I do is I start from, I go to, for this real talk, for example, I did go to the homepages of the manufacturers of deworming products. I went to I read a lot of research papers from medical universities from, like, all over the world, and I try to, understand the whole process. But that sometimes means reading like 60 pages of some chemical compound medical stuff that's really, really difficult to understand, and it takes me about 3 to 4 weeks to prepare one of those real talks, which again is not paying off. Like, it's not a money-making thing for me in any way. That would be such a stupid thing to think that I'm making money with this. I am doing this because I care, and you can do it yourself. And I'm hoping that with some of the indications and some of the keywords I give you, you might be able to verify the information that I give. It's sometimes hard to even Google stuff, because if you Google deworming, you'll just get pages and pages and pages that are basically from Bayer and from, these big pharma companies and from different things that make connections but leave out certain aspects of the connections. And all I'm trying to do is give you a little bit of a different perspective and a ground to do your own research on as well. So please don't feel attacked if you give deworming medications. I understand that. Like, it's scary. Like, worms are a scary little thing. Anyway, I said enough about this. So I'm going to start actually talking about parasites and all that. We're going to talk about internal parasites, which are worms and stuff like that. And then we're also going to talk about external parasites, and then how all of those tie together. And one more answer for you, Oscar and Karma, is Dogs Naturally magazine is always something that's a great resource. It's dogsnaturallymagazine.com. They have a lot of finely researched stuff. Whole Dog Journal is also a page I like. Raw Feeding Rebels is a good thing. I think I'm not giving like a full guarantee for everything on these pages, but I think that these are pages that can actually give you some insight. Also on Instagram there is the real food. You know what? I'll write a blog about this as well. I'll break it down and I'll consolidate some resources where you can check. Okay, so worms, parasites, any kind of parasites are nasty, and none of us want them. I think we can agree on that. But the thing is, like, do we really want to put chemicals and drugs into our dogs and cats from basically the day that we get them home? Like, do we really want to put a baby on medication? Like, that's the question I think that we should think about. It seems like nature really doesn't come up with a concept that's incomplete. Usually it's us humans who do things that are kind of like loaded with mistakes. It's usually not nature. If we just let nature work the way it's supposed to, then it usually doesn't cause any mistakes or any wrong stuff. So I think it's important for us to try to understand the whole matter of what parasites are and how they get into the body, and then what happens with medication, and what nature would do if, you know, in wild animals, like, why do they not have worms? Why are they okay? Like, let's just try to explore that. I know it can be extremely scary to think about stopping certain medications just because clearly, like, if your pet is fine, you don't know if it's because of the preventative medication or is it because your pet would be fine anyway. Like, it's all like a big scary deal, especially with internal parasites that you cannot see. So today I'd like to talk about, like, how do these medications that we give that some people give to their pets, how do they work inside the body, and are we willing to do that, or do we want to kind of take the risk and go the natural route? Another thing that's really important and that I've been seeing a little bit in messages and in your messages recently, if we do things differently than others, often they get, you know, offended or sad. Like, if we do things differently than the rest of people, if we go a new route, that's scary. New things are always scary. And people tend to attack other people just for doing something different because they might also not want to be faced with that there is more options, because then they would have to think about what they do and they might not want to do that. So it's not always comfortable to go the natural route. It's sometimes more convenient to just do what everybody does. But clearly everybody who's here is open-minded and open to new perspectives. So let's just always take in all the opinions and then make our own picture and try to think about the different opinions. Ask for reasons, do your research, and then make an informed decision so you don't have to be scared. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't compare your pet to other people's pets. All our pets are extremely different. So yeah, let's talk about worms. Finally, I've said that like 15 times, sorry. So there are different types of worms. There are intestinal worms, and then there are heartworms, basically. And I'm not going to talk too much about the different types of parasites, because basically what we're here for is how to learn to not have to deal with worms rather than getting to know them much better than before. So let's just quickly run through the kind of intestinal worms that there are. And those are clearly roundworms, tapeworms, hookworms, whipworms, as the most common ones. And roundworms, your dog can pick up the eggs from the environment by eating infected animals like birds or rodents that are dead. Tapeworms your pet can get from fleas. You'll see kind of like rice grain-like pieces in the poop if your pet has tapeworms often. So if your pet has fleas or is exposed to other pets who have, or other animals who have fleas, then you should definitely take a look out for these little rice grain-like pieces in the poop, because that could be an indication that there are tapeworms in your pet's body. Hookworms is another one. Those, yeah, like the name says, have a little hook. They attach to the intestinal lining of your pet, and then they leech, or like basically feed on the blood of your pet, and they can pick these hookworms up through the mouth or even through the pads, you know, between the skin between the paws. They can pick up the larvae from the soil just by walking over them. And important things to remember here is that especially hookworms can be passed by pregnant dogs or by moms who feed puppies. They can pass these hookworms through the mother's milk. So there's another reason why I think it's quite important to know other remedies than just medication, because if your mom is like, if your dog mom is feeding, like nursing puppies, then you probably don't want to give any heavy medication. Sorry, how do I do this? Yeah. So it's good to have some medical, some natural remedies at hand as well. Then whipworms can be picked up by swallowing eggs in soil as well, by, swallowing the eggs in water or feces of other animals. So the one common denominator and really important measure is to just keep an eye on what your pet is eating. Like when you take your dog out, it's great for them to play around and to, hunt and sniff, hunt leaves and run after whatever and sniff and get a workout. But make sure that they don't eat feces of other animals and that they do not eat any animal carcasses. Like if there's a dead bird or a dead rodent, like a dead rat or something, do not let them eat on that. Like it's not cool, because those rats or whatever it is, they could have died of poison as well. And if your pet decides to like sniff and take rip something out or whatever, and you think, well, it's meat, it's fine, it might not be, because you do not know what this animal died of, that carcass that they find. So we always, like, meat is good, but you always have to be sure where that meat is from. And don't let your pet just eat stuff on the road. Like, that's never good. For cats, clearly, it's good to clean the litter box, to clear the litter box often, but basically it's just common sense stuff, which I'm sure that all of you do anyway. I mean, you're all very responsible pet parents. So then let's talk just quickly about heartworms, which are kind of scary. Like heartworms infect dogs through mosquito bites. And clearly here in India, that is an issue. Like in many other places in the world where it's not as humid as here, heartworms are not that big a deal, and you can take some preventative medication in the more hot months. But in India, or at least in South India, it's something that you would have to do every single month if you just stick to medication. Heartworms are really scary, because heartworms they grow in the heart, they congest the heart, and they clog up everything. They can cause a lot of other organs to fail, like the lungs. So, which is why coughing not has to be, but can be a sign of heartworms. So the treatment for heartworms is really lengthy and really painful. So prevention for heartworms is really, really important. But it's fairly easy, I'll tell you. And here's a big difference to cats. Cats are an atypical host for heartworms. So typically in cats, heartworms will not even grow to full size. Like cats typically don't have adult heartworms. But that does not mean that they cannot harm cats. So even for cats, which most of the normal medication does not work on cats, like the stuff that works on dogs. So it's quite important, again, to prevent heartworms rather than to just give some medication when they're there. I'm very aware that worms are scary because they're not visible, like you don't know that they're there. But there are certain symptoms you can watch out for, and none of these symptoms isolated mean that there is necessarily a worm infection. These are just symptoms that can maybe help you determine whether you should go to the vet and get a stool sample taken to check if there's worms. For heartworms, on the other side, you need a blood sample, so that is not something that you can see in the stool. So check for diarrhea and vomiting, tummy aches, fever, then scooting, a dull cold, lethargy, mucus-covered stools or stools that have blood in them, coughing and bloating, like it's called a pot belly kind of, where dogs have as if they kind of swallowed a ball, like a very fluffed up tummy, can all be signs for internal parasites. If you see those things and you suspect that there are worms, then do go to the vet and have them check it out. You can then always decide how you want to treat them, but it's the only way to be sure is to have the vet examine it, what's going on and why certain things are showing, if there is any symptoms. Then before we get to the treatments, let's quickly talk about ticks, fleas, and mites, the external parasites that our pets can catch as well. Easy, or not easy, but some indicators for external parasites, which are easier to spot than internal parasites, of course, are, for example, little zits and scratching. You could see on Instagram, I posted a couple days ago, Teddy, when he came home to me, like he had so many tiny little dimples everywhere, rashes, because he had scabies. So you can see that. Then obviously hair loss from scratching. You can see black and dirty spots inside the ears. If you come home from walks, check between the pads of the paws, because ticks like to hide in nooks and crannies. So check between the paws, check inside the ears, check around the eyelids, in the neck and in the belly area, and between the thighs, where the thigh meets the kind of the underbelly. That's also where ticks like to hide. So just go check that. And if you do find ticks, don't just pull them off. Try to get a tweezer, like a best tick tweezer, and turn them off to the rotate to the left and get them at the very place where they, between the skin and the head, so that you really get the full tick off and not just like rip the tick apart kind of. For long-haired dogs, it's a little bit harder to find the ticks, but it does make sense to check in these certain areas. Fleas. Fleas might be visible because they're kind of like jumpy dark things, but you don't always see them. Check at the base of the ears, at the rump, or you can check the fur that your pet is shedding, right? That could have like poppy seed size little specks of dirt, but that dirt could also be flea poop. And the way to determine whether this is flea poop or just regular dirt is that if you suspect fleas, take one of those little specks that you can find and put them on a damp white tissue. And then you can see after like a minute or two, when the spot, like this little speck of dirt that you put there, if that turns red, then it's flea poop. Then you should really get it checked, and then you should also check for tapeworms, because basically what the fleas eat is your pet's blood, and the poop is just digested blood, like the flea poop. So it will rehydrate and become a little bit reddish, which normal dirt will not become red. So that's an easy kind of like indicator to see whether you have fleas on your pet or not. Last thing is ear mites. Ear mites cause kind of a thick black debris and discomfort in the ears. Symptoms include kind of like head shaking, scratching in the ears, and then like a crusty sort of discharge that looks like ground coffee in a way, but it's not as yum and not as good. So all in all, there's plenty of parasites looking to leech off your pet, looking to, get in there and get some of that blood of your pet, which we are here to prevent. And there's different ways to prevent that. Now for the controversial part. It's great marketing to say if you don't give drugs to your kid, it will get sick. But nature did not create animals so incomplete that they have to depend on medication from day one, basically. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a single streetie in India that's still alive. So, let's just, no attacking on medication. Medication is a lifesaver, like in the most literal sense of the word. But everything, the dose makes the poison. So let's just see how the medical treatments work, and then we can decide whether we do want that for our pets and whether it's worth the preventative effects it has. So the two most common used anthelmintics just meaning dewormers, like deworming compounds, are fenbendazole and praziquantel, which are also two of the three major components of Drontal, which I think is one of the major deworming agents given in the whole world. By the way, funny, in Germany where I'm from, Drontil is a prescription medication, whereas in India, I think you can still get it over the counter. So just putting that out there. Anthelmintics are used in the treatment of worm infections, and they are used preventatively. Most of them work by causing severe spasms and paralysis of the worm's muscles. So these medications actually, or these ingredients are also used for humans and to treat worm infections in humans, which clearly also can happen. But they are recommended not to use when you're breastfeeding or for children under the age of 1 year old. So it's just an indicator that it's not only purely beneficial. They are drugs. They are still, poison for parasites. But, how do you think that these chemical compounds know only to attack the worm's nervous system? They don't, The medicine cannot determine what they're attacking. They are just attacking the nervous system. So that's why there's side effects in our pets as well when we give deworming medication, because it's a low dose. Like, it's not like one deworming tablet is going to kill the pet. Like, that's not the case, mostly. But you do see side effects because it is a low dose of poison, and you have to kind of be aware of that. And that is just what it is. So your pet might work through it, and sometimes it's very, helpful. Like, sometimes you have to make the decision, like maybe you have a worm infestation, you need to get rid of it quickly, and you need medication, and you're willing and happy to take a little side effect. Like, that's absolutely fine. I just want you to know why there are side effects and what is happening in the body. So another issue with these medications is, though, that your pet might be getting these medications from a very early age on and very frequently. And then maybe in combination with other, treatments, other drugs, other syrups, pills, whatever it is. And this can lead to a buildup in the renal system. It can lead to toxins being stored in the kidneys and in the liver, which ultimately, in years to come, might lead to diseases like kidney failure, liver failure, or to seizures, to epilepsy. So again, I'm not saying stop all medication today. I'm just saying if your pet is developing certain issues like kidney issues, liver issues, go and take a look at the whole picture, what you are putting in your pet. Go look at what medications am I using, what tablets am I giving them, what food am I giving them, what am I exposing them to, what floor cleaner am I using. I'm just trying to give you the full picture here. Another thing that is quite scary actually with those medications is that, just like with many antibiotics, there are a multitude of studies from renowned, like, big universities and big research facilities. This is not something I came up with. There are many studies done, empiric, trustworthy studies that you can find on the internet if you're willing to read that much, or in books and medical publications, that many parasites have developed an immunity, a resistance to these certain anthelmintics that we talked about. So even the world-renowned Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, which on the Upper East Side, which is where like celebrities go and all that, even they, the first thing that you find when you look for deworming treatments there, they say, well, sometimes medication is needed, but please don't do it preventatively all the time, because it just makes the parasites resistant to these medications. And then, what are you going to do when you really have an infection? Then they're resistant to it. And preventatively, you might not know. You might not figure out whether they are resistant or not. But if you have an infestation and then it doesn't work, then what you're going to do. So even Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, what they recommend is stay away from simple carbs, stay away from starches, go for raw honey, go for like papaya and other fruits that have digestive enzymes and help eliminating parasites from the body naturally. So too much prevention can actually cause a drug resistance, just like too much antibiotics can cause a lot of problems. Actually, one last word about that. For malaria treatment in humans, this is actually right now a big issue in certain countries, that many, I think there's like 4 parasites that, I'm not so good with human stuff, but there's like 4 parasites that transmit the malaria disease, and 2 of them are already resistant against most of the medication against malaria because it's given so widely and so much too much to prevent malaria. And that, you know, in German we say fear is never a good advisor, and it really isn't. Like, I know it's scary, but you have to stay calm and think about what is happening inside the body. And if you give too much preventative medication, the parasites will get used to it, while your pet's system will clog up with certain chemical compounds that they cannot flush out. So medication, insanely important when needed. Veterinarians, super necessary all the time, but try to stay calm and understand why you're giving what and what's happening in the body always. For anti-tick medications, now that we talked about the deworming, which is basically mostly medication that attacks the nervous system of the worm, but also after a while can build up to attack your pet's nervous system. Now let's talk about anti-tick medications before we get to the natural ways that we could possibly treat these things or prevent those things. So tick poison, which, you know, for tick poison is what we would administer to our pets to prevent ticks and other external parasites. That goes in the fluid tissue underneath the skin. And then when an external parasite like ticks, fleas, mites, whatever, when they come, they suck the blood or the fluid, and they die because it contains poison. Again, it's basically just paralyzing and killing the parasites that leach onto it. But this poison also is in the bloodstream of your pet clearly. And this poison does not only go for them. And actually, yes, Bravecto is one of those things where, again, I'm not a vet, I'm not a chemist, I'm just a dumb old lawyer. But in the US, like even Bravecto itself has issued warnings saying, well, it can cause seizures, but, you know, that's what happens with Bravecto. And there actually have been in the US since 2018, there have been over 2,500 deaths and over like 9,000 cases reported of illness and liver failure, kidney failure because of Bravecto, or suspected to be because of Bravecto. And those were only cases that were registered, that you can find in actual empirical, like, court documents and all of that. So now think about how many cases there were where pets might have had issues, but nobody connected it to something as unsuspecting as tick medication. You know, that's something that's supposed to help. So I really, again, I'm not trying to say stay away from medication, but Bravecto is something where I'm really hesitant to not have an opinion and just be angry at, because it's just causing a lot of issues. So anyway, just be aware of that, and when you see issues happen and symptoms and you see your pet having any sort of upset after administering a certain drug, then try to make the connections, try to talk to your veterinarian and say like, hey, this happened, can you explain to me why this happened and what that means? Do the blood work, do some stool samples. Actually, you know, before administering worm medication, maybe you could do a stool test to see whether it's necessary. Maybe you can, for external parasites, just check your pet and see, are there any parasites? Are there any ticks? Anyway, we'll get to that later. Another thing that people can do against ticks and other external parasites are anti-tick collars, which also seem totally unsuspecting, right? But anti-tick collars work by releasing small amounts of pesticides. So it's basically like a little sprinkling of pesticide on your pet over months at a time if you leave that collar on. The pesticides are supposed to kill fleas and ticks and other pests, which they do. But at the same time, these collars can also harm your pet. And they can also harm you when you cuddle your pet or when you touch those. Like, we are trying to eat organic fruit and vegetables, right? Because we're trying to be healthy and we're trying to, stay away from remnants of pesticides on vegetables. But then we're putting a pesticide on our pet. Like, that doesn't make sense in some ways. Poison stays poison, even in small portions. So just be aware of that. And if you do see some issues, take the collar off, the anti-tick collar off, and see what happens. And just be aware and ask your vet about, what's going on. Ask them for help. Just ask why. Always ask why. I feel like that's one of the most important things to do. But then now let's get to the good part, or to the part where I'm like more knowledgeable, I guess. That is the natural alternatives to all sorts of drugs. So yeah, there's different things you can apply to your pet's body. There's different rubs and different powders and stuff, but I'll get to that in just a little bit. And also Vandana for Bright, I think that he probably wouldn't even need any external applications, but I'll get to all of that later. So, of course, for one thing, there is homeopathy, which is a great kind of medium between the food approach and then the medical, like allopathy. For a step in between, I feel like homeopathy is a fantastic thing. And I'm not very knowledgeable about that, but there's HomeoCare online with Dr. Ashiman Nath, who is a wonderful resource and has a lot of experience with many different things. And then my approach is always that a strong immune system can always work to prevent ever getting any issues. Like, I've seen it in my own dogs, and I've seen it in in countless streeties. Like, I've done my own little not empiric research with all these dogs that I'm handling on a daily basis, which clearly is not something that says you have to do the same thing or that my thing works for everybody. But I can just tell you the basic perspective that is possible. So just consider more than one option and consider what your pet would probably want from you or what will be best for them. Just be aware. So let's talk about how natural remedies work, and for prevention and for acute cases. So last thing, I'm not trying to have too many digs at the pharma industry, but I can't help myself. The pharma industry will clearly do anything to keep selling their products. And healthy animals don't need medication. So there's a disconnect. If you sell a product that's supposed to make people healthy, but then it's medication, you need pets to stay sick so that they can keep buying medication. Otherwise you're kind of, getting rid of your own business. So that's kind of, yeah, exactly, Pritam. Anyway, so just keep in mind that the pharma industry is an extremely powerful thing. They caused a whole opioid crisis in the United States. Bayer, which is a company that's from where I'm from, it's crazy what they do to people and animals and to the lobbying and the money they have. It is insane. They fund schools. They fund, medical schools for humans and for veterinarians. Which again does not mean that veterinarians and allopathy is not good. It is a lifesaver. But you have to sometimes think around the corner, why is somebody saying something? Anyway, there are studies. One of the studies that I like to cite, which is really disturbing, is this garlic study. Everybody thinks garlic is, definitely, for streeties, definitely. Garlic is often thought to be toxic for dogs. It actually is not good for cats. Do not feed garlic to cats. But for dogs, there's one study that this whole toxicity belief is based on, which is a study where the dogs were fed up to 70% of the diet in garlic. If I ate 70% of my diet in garlic, I would also have toxicity for garlic, because that is just way too much. The dosage makes the poison. So they fed these dogs that much garlic, and still there were no severe issues, like no dogs died or anything. They just said, well, at this level it could possibly, cause some harm. But with enough, entries on Google and stuff like that, and just like putting the message out there, people think that garlic is toxic for dogs, which is not. Garlic is extremely helpful and can actually prevent a lot of bad things for your pet, for your dogs, not for your cats. So just be aware when you see something and think about, okay, so who says this? Why do they say it? What is the background information, kind of, So then you can determine what you believe and what makes sense, and you can do further research based on this. Now, one more time, I can't shut up about gut health. Gut health and microbiome. We talked about this in the last Real Talk. But bacteria and parasites are living beings, whether it's Lyme bacteria that are transmitted by a tick, whether it's a hookworm inside the intestines or a tapeworm or whatever it is, they are all living beings that need resources. They need food. They need a place to live. Just like all of us, we need places to live, we need resources. So if your pet is well fed and healthy, it has a microbiome, which means like the multitude, like the whole, the whole organisms and everything that lives inside your pet's digestive system and on the skin and stuff is called the microbiome. And there's trillions of organisms living inside your pet. And these are, if your pet is healthy, friendly bacteria that do a hell of a lot of work for you. And that can actually replace medication in many cases. And this microbiome is affected if you give drugs, because that can actually cause an imbalance and disturb these beneficial bacteria. So getting back to why a healthy gut and a healthy microbiome is taking resources away from intruders. It's taking resources away from parasites, from bacteria that are not supposed to be there. So if the gut is healthy, then you don't have to worry that much about parasites, because there is already like a whole army of trillions of little things doing the work for you and taking care of them and expelling them. So whatever you are feeding, it doesn't have to be like a whole raw diet or whatever. You can always make tweaks according to what's individually possible for you, according to what's individual needed for your pet or your streeties, clearly. And you can, just add some stuff to make sure that you're feeding the microbiome, that you're feeding certain aspects of gut health and of the system to make sure that they can deal with any intruders. And then you can also always keep a check on stuff by getting the blood work done and by getting stool samples taken and examined, so that you know whether what you're doing is actually working. So there are many foods and natural additions that don't have to be pricey and that don't have to be from Canine India, that you can add to food to boost your pet's immunity. Again, if your pet has a healthy immune system, they are able to expel parasites without you ever possibly knowing that there were any parasites. Because if the microbiome is doing the work, you will not face these issues. If you feed enough omega-3 and collagen and stuff like that, then ticks and mites and even mosquitoes will have a hard time latching onto the skin of your pet because it's silky smooth, and they'll just have a hard time sticking to it, and they'll go and just go somewhere else and maybe bite you instead of your pet. So some of the best ways to promote a healthy immune system is to feed whole foods. You want to avoid unnecessary drugs and vaccinations which suppress the immune system. So if you can, get a titer test done before you do a vaccination. If you can, get a stool sample taken before you do a deworming. If you can, just keep a check on what's needed before you give medication. And if you have time and if you have no issues, then try to heal stuff with food. Only give medications when there's no other way, which can be important, but it also, in some cases, it can be avoidable. And medications and drugs have side effects. That's just the way it is. Even though I'm not a vet, I know that and I'm confident in that. So now, exactly. Dr. Karen Beck, those accounts that I just mentioned in the comments, Karen Becker, Rodney Habib, they have a lot of information and they actually are in this business for a long time. You can also watch, a little bit off topic, you can watch the documentary Pet Fooled, which is quite old, but still gold, on YouTube. I think it's not on Netflix anymore. Anyway, let's run through the most effective additions to food that will help prevent parasites and that can also help expel parasites from the system if they are there, without any tablets. You can always get tests done to see whether there are any issues that would justify getting drugs. So first thing that probably every single person here knows about, but I'm just gonna say it again, is pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are it's pet fooled, like PET, like pet, and then fooled, like fool, and you can easily find it on YouTube. It's like exactly, thank you, Ati. It's kind of old. I think it's like 10-12 years old, but it shows you some basics of the pet food industry. Like, it's like We Feed the World, I think, is another one about human food industry. It's just like, it's sad. Like, Google the opioid crisis on YouTube and you'll also see the pharma industry. Like, I'm ashamed to be from Germany because Bayer is from Germany, like buying Monsanto and whatever. Pumpkin seeds. Let's talk about pumpkin seeds again. That's a nicer topic. So again, pumpkin seeds have an amino acid called curcubitin, whatever, which paralyzes many types of worms. And then once they're paralyzed, they can't latch onto stuff and they can be pooped out and all is good. So that's basically what, many medications would like to do, but pumpkin seeds have less side effects than, drugs. So then another thing we already talked about and that many of you also already know about is garlic. Garlic, clearly, especially here in India, is something that we know has lots of different, medicinal properties. And that's not just for humans, that's also for puppies. And this is one that goes great for streeties as well. I mean, if they eat it, you have to find a way to make them eat it. But I had streeties come to me that were infested, like literally like so many ticks. And I would give them a pouch, like almost a whole pouch of anti-tick powder from Canon India, which you can also use garlic. I mean, anti-tick has a little bit more stuff, but like brewer's yeast and fish. But I think if you chop raw garlic, then and you can make the streeties eat that, it's a cheap and very effective option. Literally, first time he came to the warehouse, I didn't know whether he'll come back. And he had so many ticks, like it looked like eyelashes. And I gave him like almost a whole pouch of anti-tick powder. And the next day when he came back to get his next food and go sleep and like move in, he almost had lost most of the ticks. Like that was crazy. Like, it's really effective. Not for everybody, not always, but in my experience, I've done it with many, 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 at least 100 dogs, I would say. Pumpkin seeds do work for cats. Pumpkin seeds are a good and safe alternative for cats, definitely, yes. So garlic is antiviral, antibacterial, antiparasitic. It can filter the blood. It has a digestive healing effect, and it helps the body kind of like cleanse itself. Garlic can boost the production of stomach acids, which helps fight bad bacteria and yeast, which means, making the stomach insides even more hostile towards any intruders that are not supposed to be there. Which, on the other hand, processed foods like kibble, starch, rice, carbs, they are actually, converted to sugar in the body, and they parasites really like that. Like, it's really delicious. It's like a candy store inside your pet's tummy. If you feed a lot of kibble or starches, parasites really enjoy that. So it's good to stay away from starches for many reasons. So how you feed strays? Well, I mean, I'm lucky. I feed strays like I just feed them the same stuff that I would feed my dogs, or that I would send, like the same stuff that you get on the shop for canine India. That's what I use when I go out, and I feed the dogs around, and the other dogs, like we have about like 20 or 30 that come to the warehouse daily, and they just get raw meat and then some treats, of course. And other than that, I walk around and I just distribute dehydrated treats, which is clearly impossible for like if you don't have these resources. But you can, sorry to go off track here, if you have streeties, you can always just go, everything is better than no food. So if you can find like chicken feet from a butcher, or if you can find the chicken heads, or even poultry skin, like that is such a good thing. Like, I have had puppies who were so malnourished, or even moms that brought their puppies that were so malnourished, and we just gave them like a whole turkey skin and like the bums of the duck and stuff, and it's so fatty, but it's such good fat, it like builds them up so much. But usually humans won't consume it because poultry skin is just kind of like, it's not very palatable, I guess, to us. So if you can find like whatever you can find, and try to get some like fish leftovers, like when the fish vendor comes to your neighborhood or something, and he has guts or something, whatever it is, as long, if somebody doesn't have any food, if some dog doesn't have any food, you can't just always go for the best. So even rice and chicken and some fish trash or whatever, everything is better than no food at all. For garlic to puppies, like just go, it depends clearly on the puppy. Like if you have a Shih Tzu, it's different than a Great Dane puppy. But I'll write a blog about this, and I'll add some more of the dosages and stuff, so that I don't say something that then can be misleading right now. So again, let's get back to the natural remedies. Garlic, pumpkin seeds, then another thing that's really easy to add to the diet, and that is widely available in India as well, is pineapple, papaya, and pomegranate. Pineapple has an enzyme called bromelain, and papaya has an enzyme that's called papain. Bromelain in pineapple digests protein, so it can even help like just eliminating the worms and all. Papaya, the papain, and helps digest starches, so that's good to expel that food that the parasites would like. Yes, I will write for cats too. Pomegranate has antioxidants and all of that, so that's really good. Apple cider vinegar, raw and unfiltered, is rich in B vitamins. It helps the pH balance in the gut, and it's great to help expel any parasites. Then the next thing, diatomaceous earth. It's made out of crushed diatoms, which are basically fossilized marine little organisms, and they're turned to dust. So just like sand, but like much smaller. And these tiny dust particles, basically, that used to be marine organisms, they are still sharp enough in the edges that like you wouldn't feel it if you felt it between your hands, but it is such texture that the edges of these teeniest micro like shards will dry out and cut into the protective layer of the parasites inside and outside the tummy, and they cannot they cannot get resistant to diatomaceous earth, because diatomaceous earth only works mechanical. It doesn't work like chemically. It just basically dries out the skin, and then the parasites will be expelled or fall off the skin. B12, well, just go for liver or like red meat. That's good. And whole fish always help as well. Next thing real quick. I talk too much, right? I don't know. Black seeds, black cumin seeds or black seeds, it's not cumin, like it's not normal, like what you think is cumin is. So black seeds are another really cool way to fight parasites internally, which it reduces the female's ability, like the female worm's ability to lay eggs, and it also like kind of interferes with the hookworm's ability to hook on. I know, fish for president, fish for everything. Whatever question you have, my answer is fish, like mostly. So yeah, then okay, this is the next thing. Yes, you can totally sprinkle diatomaceous earth around the place as well, because it will get rid of parasites, ticks, anything. So yes, exactly. I mean, nigella seeds, black cumin seeds, they have different names, but that's exactly it. Last thing, fur and feathers. I know not everybody is super fond of feeding fur and feathers, but everything that we just spoke about, right, that kind of like paralyzes the worms or makes them not hook anymore, or like somehow disturbs the work of the worms. But then if you go ahead and you feed some fur or feathers as well, then you're feeding a broom. So once these worms are laying there and they can't really like hook on anymore and they're kind of upset, then you feed some fur or feathers, and just the voluminous and kind of like bristly, brushy kind of like texture of fur and feathers will like brush out all the parasites and make sure that they are not in the system anymore. So it's really good to add those as well. Then omega-3, collagen and elastin, like skin, fish, bone broth, always good. And last thing, I think I have to hang up on y'all. The last thing is, if you do feed medication and Drontil or something, feed probiotics like fermented vegetables, soy-based probiotics, anything to help the gut flora. Feed digestive enzymes, papaya, pineapple, raw honey. Feed some bone broth to keep the gut lining healthy. Help the immune system and renal system by adding a little extra organ meat, liver, which supplies, liver, which supplies zinc and all kinds of vitamins. Add milk thistle to detoxify the liver. There's plenty of options. And yes, fur is like a little broomsy through the intestines. Also, fur and feathers do express the anal glands, another good thing that you don't have to go to the vet for. Yes, you can soak dehydrated treats for cats in warm water. That's great. Not boiling, but warm is definitely good and more palatable for cats often. Reminder to save the life. Thank you, Palak. Is it safe to have fish bones? No, don't cook bones. Never cook bones, not even cartilage. Give it raw if your pet is fine with that, if it's healthy. Otherwise, start slowly. You can try Canine India. Okay, here's my advertisement bit. You can try all of this from Canine India. We have deworming and anti-tick stuff that has many of the things that I spoke about now. I'll write blogs about this because, again, as much as I plan, I cannot keep my time. Last thing that I'll say is fish, always the fish that small or sweetwater fish. Go for anchovy, sardine, mackerel, and any sweetwater fish. And now I think I have to go so I can save this. Thank you guys so much, and much love to all of your pets, and do let me know any questions always. Bye bye.